For years, sexual assault has been one of the hardest crimes for victims to report and police to investigate. But in 2011, a diverse group of people in Houston came together to try to understand the problem and change the system to make our response better. How could it be, they wondered, that more than 6,600 sexual assault kits were sitting untested in HPD facilities, and what could we do to change that?
We're able to see through the lens of others and how to solve the crime of sexual assault and provide better strategies to address the victims of sexual assault.
This group also wanted to provide information the rest of the nation could use. It had the help of a $1.5 million National Institute of Justice grant that would pay to test 500 kits. But that wasn't enough.
It was important to test all the kits because the technology had changed. For example, the DNA technology, we're able to link cases, which previously we could not because the DNA technology was not there. And we were able to determine fact patterns of perpetrators. More importantly, we were able to provide closure to the victims of sexual assault.
And so, as the group started to get a better understanding of the situation, Houston Mayor Anice D. Parker decided to take the next step, using about $2.5 million of city funds and additional federal grant dollars. The lab, with the help of the group, sent all 6,663 untested kits to external labs. The Houston Police Department decided to review each case for investigation. All the while, the group made changes to decades of protocol and process, taking heed of lessons learned to ensure they would not make the same mistakes in the future. One of the key changes has been to make a more victim-centric approach in investigations and prosecutions. Researchers from 2 universities helped investigators understand how to better engage victims and be more sensitive to their needs.
Moving to a more victim-centered approach to our investigations was critical, and part of that was putting the victim advocate in the adult sex crimes unit. We learned that we needed our investigators to get more training, and they needed to understand some of the natural reactions to trauma that people have.
The police department's justice advocate is embedded in the department's Special Victims Division.
It's providing support, it's providing referrals if needed, and it's providing education of the criminal justice system.
The Houston Area Women's Center since 1977 has been providing services as a nonprofit community-based organization to survivors of both domestic and sexual violence.
The Houston Area Women's Center helped make this new role a success, not only by working with the police, but by hiring an advocate of their own to exclusively work on this project and coordinate closely with their counterpart in the police department.
For us, it was important that a project that existed with government agencies supported their local rape crisis centers. And so they supported them not only in a collaborative manner, but also with monetarily, and that was important for us.
But before all of this, when a rape is first reported, a victim may choose to report the crime, and as part of that, have a hospital exam. This is where the sexual assault kit is compiled and the forensic evidence is collected.
A sexual assault nurse examiner is a registered nurse that's been specially educated to provide comprehensive care to a patient who has experienced a sexual assault and doing it in a very compassionate and sensitive manner.
Here, too, lessons were learned and changes were made.
When I look at our evidence collection specifically, we were doing some steps in the collection process that were antiquated and no longer needed. And so we were able to realize through that open dialogue that we didn't need to do those steps early on, and that then, of course, made it much better for the patient that we were caring for and streamlined our process with the completion of the evidence collection. One of the benefits that was reestablished was being able to have a designated officer that would be available to us during the day so that we could release those kits and get them to the lab much quicker than what we had previously.
The Houston Forensic Science Center, a nonprofit independent local government corporation that has taken over management of what was previously the police department's crime lab and parts of the identification division, has also made changes in how it deals with sexual assault kits and in its DNA lab. The forensic biology section staff has more than doubled since the research began. Technology is constantly improving and being upgraded. But one of the most important changes is in how testing actually occurs.
We are now picking up the sexual assault kits on a weekly basis. Instead of having it investigator-driven, we're testing automatically.
The Harris County District Attorney's Office has also played a critical role in the project by holding offenders accountable. Working with law enforcement, the Houston Forensic Science Center, SANE examiners, and researchers, the District Attorney's Office looked for the best way to handle sexual assault cases and let victims have their day in court.
Court, come to order, please.
All right, be seated.
The department has dedicated 11 experienced prosecutors to help evaluate cases associated with hits in CODIS, the national DNA database, which houses profiles of convicted offenders and potential suspects.
What we've learned is the more you know about sexual assault, the less we know about sexual assault. It's very complicated. These offenses are very difficult to prosecute, and we have to get juries and judges to understand that these aren't your regular cases. These victims have gone through a very traumatic experience. These 11 prosecutors have volunteered to do this because they want to hold these offenders accountable, and they want to make victims feel safe, and they want to hear these victims' stories, and they want to help them.
All the while, 2 universities worked with the team to research their work, interview victims, and help them implement changes to make the process better.
We also wanted to know how, moving forward, the system could respond more effectively to sexual assault in the local context.
Wells' research team produced reports which dealt with prioritizing SACs for testing, setting up cold case squads, creating new training opportunities, and bridging effective collaboration between victim advocates and the justice system. The Institute of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault at the University of Texas at Austin helped investigators understand the neurobiology of trauma as it relates to sexual assault and how better to engage victims while being sensitive to their needs. The research also led to procedural changes in how evidence is packaged in the SACs.
We knew that untested sexual assault kits were a big national problem, and we wanted to be on the forefront of being part of solving that problem.
Now, nearly 4 years later, the team remains intact. Cooperation has peaked. The 6,663 kits have been tested, and the findings have been passed along to police. Some have already had a day in court, and the lessons learned by Houston are being shared with other cities nationwide that face a similar problem. And the victims, whose cases may have gone unnoticed for years, are being heard.